Why is Talmudic Judaism different from Old Testament Judaism? Well, there is no such thing as Old Testament Judaism and Talmudic Judaism. There is Judaism. That's it. The Written Torah and the Oral Torah are one. They're not two of the different. Now, what the problem is, what the Christian missionaries that sometimes call themselves Messianic Jews or Hebrew Israelites or the people from Islam will sometimes tell you things about the Written Torah and things about the Oral Torah in order to confuse you and mislead you. But what they don't tell you is that there would be no religion at all, not Judaism, not Christianity, and not Islam, without the Oral Torah, which the primary part of the Oral Torah is the Talmud. And the reason why is because part of what the Oral Torah does is it gives us an understanding of what the Oral Torah, what the Written Torah actually says, the Old Testament actually says. So for example, in the book of Genesis, God says to Avraham to have a circumcision, to cut something called orla. Now, what is orla? Now, you're not going to find this word many times in the Torah. And in fact, you're never going to find a verse that gives you the definition for the word orla. So, if God says, cut this orla from your body, the average male, you tell him, listen, God loves you, but he says that in order for you to show your love to him, your commitment, you have to cut a piece of your body called orla. Now you're going to ask the first question, if you're a smart person, you're going to say, okay, what's an orla? What's an orla? Now, if you're even smarter, you're not going to ask. You're going to simply determine, since they didn't tell me what the orla is, I'll just determine what the orla is. So maybe it's a piece of my ear, cut off a little earlobe, much easier than circumcision. Maybe it's the nails. I cut off a nail, much easier than even the earlobe. Maybe it's it's a hair. Maybe, what you could just simply decide. Obviously, if Avraham Avinu understood that the orla is the foreskin on the male member, the most sensitive part of the body, and he's still willing to do it at the age of 100, and then commit this very same act for the next 4,000 years until this day, every Jewish baby that's born on the 8th day, unless they're medically unable to because they're sick or they're weak, on the 8th day, they have the very same circumcision that Avraham Avinu had at 100 years old. Why didn't anybody reject it? Why didn't anybody throughout the last 4,000 years say, you know what, I think orla means something else. Maybe it means the nails, maybe it means the beard, maybe it means the nose, maybe it means a tooth, anything but the foreskin. But nobody ever said that. Everyone agreed, including the Christians, including the Muslims, that the orla has always been the foreskin. Where did you get the definition? It's not in the Written Torah, it's not in the Old Testament. Where did you get it from? The Oral Torah. The Oral Torah is what gives us that. The same exact thing is in every other aspect of the Torah, so much so that the vowel system is not part of the Written Torah. Meaning, if you go to a synagogue, every synagogue has multiple Torah scrolls. You open a Torah scroll, all Torah scrolls are going to show you the same exact thing. It's going to be black ink on a parchment that's white, and the words don't have the dots, the dashes, don't have beginning or ending of statements. There's no sentences that are like structure of English and other languages. There's no vowel systems, no punctuation system on the Torah scroll. So how do you know where the sentence ends or where it begins, or even how to pronounce the word or what the word means? Because in English you have a letter-based vowel system, A, E, I, O, U, and sometimes Y. But in Hebrew, there is no letters that are the vowel system. Rather, there is the dots that you have under or inside the letters or the dashes. This is called nikud. This is not part of the Written Torah. This is something that is taught to us in the Oral Torah, which means that without it, you simply would not have the ability to understand a single verse in the Torah. For example, same example I've been giving for the last decade. If you wanted to say Moses is righteous, so you would say Moshe Tzaddik. Moshe Tzaddik. Now, in English, Moses is righteous is 3 words, and each one of those words has vowels in it. The word Moses has the O and the E. And therefore, without the vowels, Moses turns into Mis. Mis. Then you have is. Is has 1 vowel. That's an I. Without the I, all you have is a S. So Mis. Then you have the word righteous. Righteous has multiple vowels. You have the I, you have the O and the U. So if you don't have the I and the O and U, the righteous turns into rigs. So you have mis, rigs. Perhaps sounds like maybe like a bark, or maybe something, a sound that certain animals make. Certainly doesn't sound like Moses is righteous. Without the vowels, Moses is righteous is mis. Sounds like a curse maybe in different languages. So the nikud is from the oral Torah, not from the written Torah, which means that all religions, Christianity, Catholicism, Islam, are dependent on this very same part of the oral Torah as Judaism. And without this oral Torah, no religion would exist. So you cannot ever say that you agree with Christianity but disagree with the oral Torah. Why? Because without the oral Torah, there wouldn't be Christianity. You agree with Islam but you disagree with the oral Torah. There's no such thing as Islam without oral Torah. I agree with Judaism but I don't agree with the oral Torah. There's no such thing. There is no Judaism without oral Torah. In fact, the only common denominators left between Judaism and the other religions end up coming from the oral Torah, not the written Torah. So when people say, no, the Talmud is bad, and the Talmud has all types of strange things in it, that just simply means a couple things. Number 1, the person is a manipulator. Number 2, the person has never learned the Talmud. Number 3, the person is an evil person that simply is going to look for something to serve their needs and manipulate it in order to influence the public. So when a person truly learns Talmud, they understand that this is the ultimate wisdom that could possibly exist, and all of the things that will sound strange, look strange, and even be strange have explanations, have clarifications, many of which we've discussed over the years, many of which, Bezrat Hashem, we will discuss in the future. But needless to say, if a person just looks at the face value of anything in life, certainly they will see that there is something wrong. If you simply get medicine, but without understanding how medicine works, without understanding how much research went into the medicine, without understanding the risk of not taking the medicine, and the first thing you ever saw on medicine is simply the what could happen, all of the side effects. Okay, what side effect? Get a headache, get nosebleed, urinate uncontrollably, vomit uncontrollably, incapable of sleeping, heart attack, stroke, on and on and on. You're going to say to you, bro, no, hey, listen, buddy, I'm not taking this. This is terror, this is poison. No, this is medicine. What is it medicine for? Oh, it's a medicine for asthma. What? This is a medicine for asthma? Yeah, what about all these side effects? Yeah, these are possibilities, but it's worth the risk, because if the person with asthma doesn't take it, he's going to die. And the likelihood of these side effects is very minimal. And even if you get side effects, you can control it where you can stop taking it and it doesn't get to that extent. But they still have to disclose it. So anything that you look at without being educated the right way is going to look like it's bad, or simply it's going to look different than what it really is. If a person simply concluded who you are, each one of you that's watching right now, just by looking at you from afar, on an average Tuesday afternoon, Perhaps you had a bad hair day. Perhaps you had a bad, day altogether. Perhaps you had a really good day. Perhaps you just won a bunch of money. Perhaps you just lost a bunch of money. You had a good meal. You had a terrible meal. You have a stomach ache. You don't feel well. But this person decides that he's going to conclude everything about you from afar, without even talking to you, just by looking at you from afar. Would you say that that's a fair analysis of who you are? Obviously not. And that's in essence what's happening from the missionaries and all the other ignoramuses that are trying to distort the Talmud. They look at it from afar without having a concept of what's really in it, without ever truly studying it, without truly understanding what's behind the scenes. But they look at it from afar and then they decide they become teachers. I even saw actually one time this gruesome, vile human being that's actually part of the Hebrew Israelites, who doesn't stop cursing and just literally speaks like some animal, or like just a disgusting person. Anyway, he says on air, he actually says on a video, which happened to be about me, and he says, I'm a Torah scholar. I know Talmud. I'm a Talmud scholar. He actually calls himself a Talmud scholar. He says, I got Talmud. And he takes out a book that says Talmud. And it's one single book. Now, what he doesn't realize, that the Talmud is not one book. It's not one book. If you combine the Jerusalem Talmud with the Babylonian Talmud, it's 60 different Masechtot. If you get the English version, you have 150 books, more than 100 books. But he thinks that it's one book. He thinks it's one book. Meaning that his knowledge is so minimal that he doesn't even know what the Talmud is. Yet he says, I'm a Talmud scholar. Why? Because he has a book that says something about the Talmud. But it's a single book. Obviously it's not the Talmud. But that's the ignorance here. His audience also doesn't know what the Talmud is. And therefore they believe him. They say, yeah, look, he's got a book that says Talmud on it. I think it says Talmud for Dummies, but that's a different story. The point being is that people that are uneducated about Judaism don't know what they don't know. Now, when it comes to medicine, when it comes to other aspects of life, people are willing to admit what they don't know. If your doctor tells you, listen, I understand you're scared of this medicine, you're scared of this surgery, but you got to trust me, I've been doing this for 20 years. The average normal person takes their word. You've been doing it for 20 years, 30 years, surgeries, medicine, everything. I'm going to trust you, even though I don't know what you're doing. I don't know how it's going to work. You're telling me it's going to work because you're an expert? Fine, I'm going to listen to you. You're a health professional. I'm going to listen to you. You go to your dentist tells you have to take all these teeth out, you have to put this one in, you have to make holes in this one, that's how you're going to fix it, all types of stuff that's painful and expensive. You don't question a dentist. Why? Because you know the last time you went to him with a toothache, he made it stop. You don't really know how he made it stop and why making holes in your teeth and putting some stuff in there and taking stuff out, you don't actually know how it worked, you just know it worked and it stopped hurting. So you went back and you were willing to accept whatever he told you to do. You didn't question it. The same thing is if you went to your accountant or your lawyer and they told you, listen, you have to pay X amount of money in order to complete this thing and avoid all risk of going to jail or being arrested or getting fined or losing your business and so on and so forth. Now, you're not a legal expert or an accounting expert, but yet you pay them for that service because they're the experts. Meaning the average person has no problem accepting the expertise of others blindly. The only time that people have a problem accepting the expertise is when it comes to Torah. And in fact, the only place that has real expertise is the Torah. Why? Because unlike the lawyer and the doctor that has experience for the last 20 or 30 years, that is only connected to him and not to the generations before, because even if he learned some medical books from previous generations, most of the stuff from the previous generations is no longer relevant to this generation. The equipment has changed, the people have changed, everything has changed. So generally that 30-year experience that this doctor has is unique to him and will become insignificant in the next generation. Yet the Torah that I'm teaching you, the Torah that Rabbi Ephraim is teaching, the Torah that Rabbi Ovadia is taught, the Torah that the Rambam taught, the Torah that all of the sages taught, has always been the same Torah, relying on the generation before and the generation before and the generation before, all the way to Moshe Rabbeinu. Meaning that you're not relying on my expertise. I'm a zero. I'm less than zero. You're relying on Moshe Rabbeinu. You're relying on the great sages throughout all of the last several thousand years, their expertise, not mine. I'm simply just telling you what they said, saving you the time to read hundreds of books. Now, you're welcome to read the books yourself, but most people are not going to do it. Either they don't have the time or the ability or whatever. The point being is, you're not relying on my expertise, and you shouldn't. What you are relying on is the expertise of the sages for the last 3,000 plus years. Judaism is the only religion that has that. Nothing else has that. If you go to the medical world, to the legal world, they don't have that. Why? Because anything that's of yesteryear, anything from historically, generally speaking, more or less is useless. Same thing with Christianity. You go to the Christian pastors and priests and missionaries of today, they're not teaching you what Martin Luther said. They're not teaching you what any of the so-called sages of Christianity said 500 years ago, 1,000 years ago. They're not teaching you that. They're teaching you their current modern day interpretation of what was written many, many centuries ago. Which means that the sages that were closest to when this religion started have no say, have no connection to the teachings of today. The original Pope is not taken into consideration by a local pastor or priest. The second, the third, the fifth, the 10th Pope, the leaders of the religion, Martin Luther, any one of these people, their beliefs are not taken into consideration by anybody that's speaking to the Christian people today. So where do the Christian leaders get their information? Simple. They make it up. They make it up. Sometimes they'll actually watch me and other rabbis to get some new material and pretend like they came up with it. I have a few of them that I caught them a few times looking and saying certain things that they said. They even ask for information. They pretend to be Jewish. Point being is, they don't have a tradition. They have a speaking ability. That's it. And you think it's any different than Islam? Same exact thing. Perhaps it's not as obnoxious as Christianity is at times, but needless to say, it's the same thing. Your average sheikh out there that's that's telling people to follow Islam, to follow Muhammad, Alhamdulillah, and all the good stuff. Fine. Where'd you get this information from? Which sage do you hear them mentioning? Generally speaking, you never hear them mention a single sage. You have them tell you what certain verses in the Quran say. Who told you that this is what it says? Who told you that this is what it means? Well, I understand it. Meaning, they don't see that there's a difference between them today and the people that were closer to the foundation of their religion 1,400 years ago. Now, any normal person would obviously agree that if I lived next door to Moses himself, certainly I am guaranteed to know more about what he said and what he taught than anybody else in the world today. Why? I live next to him. I went to his classes. I was there at Mount Sinai. So of course I know more than anybody else that's not there, that wasn't there. Now, if I lived 2 or 3 generations after Moses, certainly I wouldn't know more than the people that lived next door to him, but I still would know more than the people that lived 5 generations after me. Why? I was closer to the source. Anybody play the game telephone? Things change over time, and obviously the closer you are to the source, the more you know, and even more so, the more details you have. Now, when you have Christianity and Islam simply disregard any wise person that they had, any leader that they had, or most leaders at least, throughout the last 1400 to 2000 years, respectively, then what you end up having is that whoever wants to be a leader in Islam, all he needs to know is either how to read the Quran or simply how to listen to YouTube videos of somebody else that read the Quran and then tell people what he thinks about it. That's it. You don't need anything else, because you could simply make up whatever you wanted to say. That's not possible in Judaism. These types of things are not possible in Judaism. So this is the beauty of Judaism, is that it's not only true because we say it's true because it's verifiable to the point where you cannot challenge it. The more you know, the more you realize there is no other truth. There is no other truth other than Torah. And this, Baruch Hashem, is something that all religions, in fact, depend on while they're rejecting it, which actually highlights their ignorance.